Good morning, everyone. My name is Morgan Gartrell, and I'm going to be giving an informative speech on effective communications for Communications 101. Approximately 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. And why do all of these marriages fail? The answer is poor communication. Lifestyle website yourtango.com polled 100 mental health professionals, and found that communication problems were cited as the number one cause leading in divorce, which is at 65%, followed by couples' inability to resolve conflicts, which is at 43%. Effective communication is essential for a marriage to survive. Communication is the key component in successfully navigating the first year of marriage. While dating was easy, the mental switch from in a relationship to marriage was significant. Suddenly, issues which had never bothered me before became issues and started to threaten my divorce and would get me to the breaking point of divorce. In the end, we both recognized that we are failing in communication effectively with one another. It required our combined efforts to respectfully share our thoughts and feelings. Respectively and effective communications are the most important factors in a loving Christian marriage. During the next 4 to 6 minutes, I will present examples to explain how we communicate, the barriers to effective communication, and the crucial points in avoiding misinformation. Communication is a complex process. We tend to focus on the verbal aspect of communication, how there are so many nonverbal communications in facial expressions, gestures, and posturing. And before there is any active communication, there may also be situational communication. As humans, we are constantly processing all of this information. For an example, it's 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, but you told your spouse you want to get up early and get ready for all your chores the next day. You've been awake since 8 a.m. and you keep looking at the full garbage can, which should have been taken out the night before. Your spouse awakens and enters the kitchen and heads straight to the coffee machine. He pours a cup of coffee, turns nonchalantly, and says, "I thought we were getting up early today." All of these factors together may form a perspective which your spouse has ignored you, and now you want to utter a comment as taunt, or is it? Let us explain the situation from the other perspective. Could you take out the trash? Your spouse asks. You answer, "Sure." Your spouse adds they would like to start the day early tomorrow since you'll be watching football with your friends most of the Sunday. And from the other position, you think to yourself, "This is a great idea, and you are so lucky to have a spouse who enjoys watching football and lets you watch football. Great plan, honey. I'm in." And then the phone rings. It's your work calling. After the exhausting 10-minute conversation, you realize just how worn out you feel from a long week at work. In fact, you barely remember falling asleep while watching television and stumble to bed. You wake up around 10 and wonder why your spouse let you sleep in, when you both agreed to get up early. Still drowsy, you make your way to the kitchen, seeking that sweet morning coffee while you shake off all those cobwebs. As you turn, you see your spouse is sitting at the kitchen table, sitting there staring into space. "I thought we were getting up early today," you said aloud, wondering why your spouse did not wake you. Again, wondering why the garbage is still out. And then you make a mental note, since the garbage is full, to take it out after you finish your cup of coffee. Neither spouse is right or wrong in the situation. They simply perceive the same sequence of events differently. Obviously, the perspective may not be the reality, but a perception can certainly alter the start of the day. In the event described, the couple is getting a late start on their day, and the garbage will be taken out in the morning instead of the evening prior. However, the reality is about to be altered negatively by the first spouse who perceived that they were not being respected. Maybe the most important part we need to remember as a spouse is to give our other spouse the benefit of the doubt. Giving our spouse any situation, our first instinct should be to always have a good demeanor. If there's a question about any action or word that they are doing, you should always ask them and go to them and address it immediately. Don't let it hover around. Allowing these perceiving negative actions will stack up, only making the situation worse, especially if your spouse never meant anything negative to begin with. This does not excuse unflattering or demeaning actions by any means to one another. Joking around and teasing is only funny if both parties understand the jokes. It is important that we treat our spouses with respect. Our words and our actions matter. We must always strive to reassure our significant others or loved ones that we love them and respect them. There really is no demeaning quality to jokes or measures which deem the ones we love. Often, these altered perspectives describe our unconscious and the result of poor communication. The key element in solving problems and avoiding issues is effective communication. Effective communication is both verbal and nonverbal elements. The concept of good verbal communication is fairly direct. Avoid obscurities and stay positive. We've already described the negative aspects to avoid, but it is still our individual responsibility to express our feelings and thoughts directly. Human beings do not communicate telepathically. We cannot read our spouse's mind. We cannot blame our spouse for not knowing something that we have never expressed directly. He or she should have known is never a good example to hold a grudge or to be upset with your significant other. It is not to say how you communicate is not important. Posture, gesture, and facial expressions are important in information as well. Think about how confusing it would be if you said to your spouse, "I love you," by rolling your eyes and scolding. You could develop an hour alone to explain all the different types of body language. However, it will suffice with what we are going over now. Communication with one another with a happy face and looking directly into each other's eyes is also an effective communication role. Direct and open communications, which conveys thoughts and feelings, are essential in effective discussions between spouses. However, none of these matter without the key ingredients of a positive and loving Christian marriage and mutual respect for each other. Respect is everything in any relationship. Friends, family, marriages, we all should always express respect for one another, our ideas, our thoughts. While this aspect is important, the recipe to express it is relatively simple. The first component of respect is active listening. By actively listening to one person or another, we are really hearing what they are saying. We are processing everything that we are hearing, and that we're also formulating any questions of information that we don't understand. The next component of respect is avoiding lecturing others. We do not express our thoughts through lectures. No one enjoys being talked down to. In fact, most people stop listening when they perceive this mode of communication. Treating our spouse as our equal is huge. They need to know that you are concerned about how they are receiving what you are telling them and also what you're transmitting. Lastly, we truly express respect for our significant others when we affirm our spouses has relayed to us. So we have to get back and forth communication to be effective. Initially, we can do this by repeating the information back as we have interpreted. After we understand them, the strongest measure of respect is when we act or conduct ourselves in a matter and measure that they have expressed is important to them. In summary, the key components to a successful marriage is effective communication. And for this presentation, my citations is the American Psychology Association, Divorce Rate, Divorce Polled, Poor Communication Surveys done by Huffington Post, and How Does It Work at Psycho Central. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.